Everyone uses Ezekiel's vision to talk about the future. The problem is that it happens when his world is already collapsing, and this is the part people usually miss. Ezekiel is in exile. Jerusalem is already in crisis. The people have lost ground, stability, and control. Even so, the fantasy is still alive that the temple guarantees everything, which is a very bold belief to keep holding when the nation is already sliding into disaster. That is the real setting of the vision, not peace, not stability, not one of those neat dramatic moments where everything pauses so a prophet can calmly explain tomorrow. This begins in the middle of pressure, confusion, and a world that is already starting to crack. It is like calmly discussing tomorrow while the building structure is already giving way. That is the atmosphere. And Ezekiel is not just a prophet seeing strange things, he is a priest without a temple. A man trained to serve at the religious center, right when the center starts to fail. That detail matters more than people think, because Ezekiel was shaped for order, ritual, sacred routine, and a system that was supposed to hold everything together. He was prepared for a world where the center still worked, where the structure still meant stability, and where the temple still looked like the obvious sign that everything had not completely fallen apart. Then that structure starts failing anyway. Great timing to discover that security may not have been so secure after all, and that is what makes the usual reading so backward. People see wheels, fire, strange creatures, movement, and immediately jump to future mysteries, prophetic charts, and theories that sound very impressive in long comment sections. Meanwhile, Ezekiel is standing in the middle of collapse. That should probably affect how the scene is read, because the vision does not arrive in a world that still has control. It arrives in a world that is losing it. The people are still treating the temple like a guarantee. They are still acting as if the symbol automatically protects the reality. They still want to believe the structure is solid because the idea of losing it is too disruptive to name out loud. Basically, if the building is still standing, then clearly everything is fine. Terrible method. Very common method, but still terrible. So when the vision begins, it does not feel like God handing out a comfortable preview of the distant future. It feels like something far more unsettling. It feels like confrontation, like exposure, like a message entering the exact moment when false security is already starting to rot. And that changes everything, because once the vision starts in collapse, the whole scene reads differently. It is no longer just a mystery to decode. It becomes a challenge to the assumptions people are still clinging to. It stops sounding like a calm explanation of tomorrow and starts looking like a direct interruption of the present. And that changes everything. The vision does not begin where control still exists. The people still trust the symbol, they still trust the city, they still trust the temple as if divine presence works by fixed address. That is the realistic version of the people, and that is the central problem. The vision does not come to feed curiosity. It comes to confront a comfortable lie, because the people are still acting as if the symbol guarantees safety. They still look at the city and assume the center is secure. They still look at the temple and think visible structure means everything is still under control, which is a very common way to misunderstand a crisis. If the outside still looks respectable, people assume the inside must still be fine. If the symbol is still standing, they assume the reality behind it must still be standing too. And that is exactly the kind of logic this vision is about to challenge. It is the logic of thinking that if the facade still looks nice, nobody needs to inspect the cracks underneath. That is the lie they want to keep believing, not because it is true, because it is comfortable. If the temple still feels familiar, then maybe nothing has really changed. If the city still exists, then maybe the crisis is temporary. If the symbol still stands, then maybe the deeper reality does not need to be questioned at all. The building was still standing. So many people concluded that everything was fine. Terrible standard. And that is what makes this moment so important. The real issue is not just Babylon exile or political collapse. The deeper issue is that the people still confuse visible structure with actual security. They are treating the center like a guarantee, even while the reality around them is already coming apart. Then the vision turns that assumption inside out. The glory of God appears in motion, not trapped, not stationary, not subordinate to the religious center. That is the turning point of the chapter, because the people still think in fixed categories, fixed place, fixed symbol, fixed guarantee. But the vision does not support any of that. It does not show divine presence locked inside the system they trust. It does not show God tied to the center they have turned into a source of false confidence. It shows movement. And that movement is a direct challenge to the lie they still want to believe. Because if the glory of God is not trapped, not stationary, and not subordinate to the religious center, then the whole assumption underneath their confidence starts falling apart. The problem is no longer just what happened to the nation. The problem is that they were trusting the wrong thing all along. That is why this vision matters so much. It does not arrive to make people curious about the future. It arrives to confront a comfortable lie in the present. And once that appears, the question is no longer as simple as it seems: wheels, eyes, fire, movement everywhere. It looks like perfect material for exaggerated theories. The problem is that the vision did not come to entertain anyone. That is the explosive part of the scene. Because once the vision begins, it stops looking like a beautiful mystery and starts sounding much more like a diagnosis. The images are strange, yes, very strange, but they are not random, decorative, or included just to keep readers confused for the next 2,000 years. They are saying something. The wheels show movement, the eyes show that nothing goes unnoticed, the fire shows holiness and judgment. That is the key point. The vision is not building atmosphere for fun. It is not trying to impress people with complexity. It is showing movement, awareness, holiness, and judgment, right in the middle of a people who still want stability, predictability, and a reassuring explanation that changes nothing important. Which is awkward timing for everyone hoping for a more relaxing message, because the people wanted predictability. The vision answered with the opposite. That is what makes the scene feel less like an enigma and more like an alert. The wheels do not support the fantasy that everything is fixed and under control. The eyes do not support the fantasy that the deeper problem can be ignored. The fire does not support the fantasy that this is all just strange imagery with no real confrontation behind it. The vision is pushing directly against the reading the people would have preferred. It is like discovering that the real command has already left the building, while everyone is still debating whether the front desk is functioning normally. That is the modern version of the problem. Everyone is still staring at the visible system, asking whether the surface still works, while the vision is already exposing a much bigger reality behind it. That is why the symbols matter so much. The wheels show movement. The eyes show that nothing goes unnoticed. The fire shows holiness and judgment. So no, this is not just dramatic imagery dropped into the story for effect. It is the opposite. It is a direct challenge to the assumptions people are still using to read their own situation. They want something manageable. The vision gives them something disruptive. They want a mystery they can safely discuss. The vision acts more like a warning they would rather avoid. And then the twist becomes clear. The vision is not saying, decode the future. It is saying, you have read the present very badly. That is the natural turn of the whole chapter. Because once that line lands, the imagery changes, the scene changes, even the strangeness changes. It no longer feels like a distant puzzle first. It starts feeling like a confrontation with the current moment first. And that is why this section matters so much. The strange part was never strange just to be strange. It was strange because it was exposing something people were still trying very hard not to admit. And this is where the vision starts becoming less mysterious and much more dangerous. After the turn, the vision does not offer escapism. It offers confrontation. It does not feed empty fascination. It forces the people to face the fact that tradition, structure, and symbol do not hold up a rotting system. That is the meaning that usually gets left out. Because by this point, the vision has already done something most people do not expect from the way it is usually discussed. It has not handed Ezekiel a dramatic chart about the distant future. It has not arrived to satisfy prophetic curiosity. It has not shown up to help people safely admire strange imagery from a comfortable distance. It has walked straight into denial. That is why the whole thing matters so much. The people do not mainly need more information about tomorrow. They need to stop lying to themselves about today. They need to face the fact that the crisis is not just outside them, not just political, not just military, and not just temporary. The deeper problem is that they still trust the wrong things. They still want structure to mean safety. They still want tradition to mean stability. They still want symbols to keep carrying a reality that is already breaking apart. And the vision does not support any of that. It confronts it. The people's problem was not a lack of information about the future. It was an excess of confidence in a security that was already broken. That is the modern conclusion. And once that is clear, the whole vision reads differently. The strange imagery is no longer there to create vague fascination. The movement is no longer just dramatic. The warning is no longer hidden behind the symbols. The point becomes direct. Exile, false security, strange vision, glory in motion, wrong reading dismantled. Present exposed. That is the quick recap of what the vision is actually doing. It is not soothing people with continuity. It is confronting them with collapse. It is not protecting their assumptions. It is tearing those assumptions down. It is not helping them avoid the present by obsessing over the future. It is doing the opposite, which is why the final irony lands so hard. They wanted a vision about continuity. They received a vision about collapse. That is the part that keeps getting lost when the scene gets turned into a distant puzzle instead of a present tense warning. Because the vision was never mainly about helping people feel informed. It was about making denial harder to maintain. It was about exposing what was already happening. It was about forcing the people to see that visible structure and real security are not the same thing at all. And that brings the whole scene back to the main point. Ezekiel's vision did not come to explain the future. It came to show that the present was already breaking, and almost nobody wanted to admit it. Which misunderstood Bible moment should he simplify next? Jeremiah? Daniel? Isaiah?